Could I ask you about the time? And so we talk about the implications. And I think this will be a long. Yes, and I also talked with you. And yeah. But I think this will be a long question, like you know. So maybe we can do it after. Okay, yes, maybe. Yeah, because I think we're about to start. All right. No problem. Yes, yes. Actually, could you help us yes, of course. With this thing? Sorry. No. So let's continue. Thank you. Perfect. She used. I already given up. Even have what? Just take problems afterwards. No. Okay, so maybe we can start, and if you have another colleagues coming, they are coming. They just joined, but I just wanted to thank you all. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Natalie. I'm happy to share this session with you. I'm a sociologist, that's my background. I'm doing my PhD studies here in the FU, but also I work in the DevelopmentE. I don't know if you know it. It's the Berlin Social Science Center. We are more than 400 social scientists, so there's a lot of economists, there's people from politics science, sociologists, so it's a good mixture. And I'm in the Department of Labor Market and Education and Labor Market. So, and that's part of what we are going to discuss today. I saw the syllabus and I know that education has been part of your discussions, but also I'm very interested in development. I'm studying Uruguay and Chile as two country cases that hasn't been all that studied in the school to work transitions. That's the main research of my dissertation. So yeah, that's why I really appreciate the developmental economists, because you go more, see more than the global north and the European context, and yeah. But today we're going to see a classical paper. It's at this point classical. It's from the 2000s, and these two sociologists study vocational education. We're going to see a little bit about that, and what is the effect on of vocational education in later labor outcomes. Okay, but before we start, I just wanted to talk to you about education in a broad sense, and to see what can be studied about education, and I want you to participate. I mean, in this session we are going to talk about this specific paper, but the idea is to discuss, and the more you participate, it's more fun for everyone, more interesting. But so we are going to discuss broadly education, and then we're going to the paper on vocational education to see the research questions, the theoretical framework of the authors, what data and operationalization in the use, and some results and conclusions. Okay, so about education, and I think we are going to do, because of the, it takes a minute to go.
Actually,
or maybe I need to
turn it off.
Yes, okay. So we use the whiteboard, and then we clean up, and everything is multi-purpose here, okay? But so we have education, right? What do you think we need to research about education? What's important in our societies? What do we need to learn about education? What do you think? It's a broad question, I know, but let's start. Yes?
How to eventually survive economically, so getting a job, getting an income.
Okay, so labor market, we can do it more. Exactly, so you get educated, you at some point go to the labor market. So we have all of those research questions, right? Which education gives better returns, what's better returns to education, but also to what job positions, wages. We have life course, that's also an aspect to consider. Maybe some education gives you a job right away, but further along in your trajectory, then you are not so well positioned in the structure, for example, right? Or what happens if you are in the labor market and other aspects of your life also develop. But yes, labor market, one very important part. In my dissertation, we study school-to-work transitions. It's a whole thing for economics, for sociology. Yes. What more? Yes.
Maybe history as life experience.
History. What do you mean?
Yeah,
I'm interested, but what do you mean? History on the individuals or on the institutions, or both?
Both in principle, because
Right.
something happened in the past, or there were consequences, and to learn out of these consequences.
Perfect.
Not to do the same mistakes again.
Yeah, for example, but also every aspect will have an impact on the further event, right? So, with life course, there's this bunch of methods that study specific events in a lifetime, right? And how this event can then affect the next one and the next one. So, yes, history, it's important to consider in the individual sphere, but also institutions, right? Like there's path dependence. All this discussion on path dependence is that there's history, the institutions develop, and then it's hard to change, or they reproduce themselves. Yeah.
No, or to learn from the legal system, or the legal system is also based on history as an institution.
Exactly. So in the history we have the individuals, but also the institutions, right? And when we think about the institutions, we have all the dimensions. We have the economic dimension, the legal dimension, all of them. Yes.
The finance behind it, so costs of education.
Exactly, how much it costs, then the returns. It's if you think about an investment, it's a good investment. Who can do this investment?
Who can
right?
enter if we talk about generations? Yes.
That's perfect. I'm thinking, you said who can enter. What do you mean? What you enter to education? What's
So we have in
Yeah.
Latin America, like a broad region, one of the highest unequal areas in the world.
Yes, I'm
And
familiar.
if we separate like elites and poor, and
Okay.
so and this goes on for generations. So if we are in the trap of poorness and can't enter the system, and rich can, and this will spread.
Okay, so you brought a lot of things to the table, very good. But we have inequality, right? Inequality, sorry, I can't think and write. Inequality, so you think not everyone goes to the system and have the same experience, right? Not everyone can enter. And you talk about mobility. Mobility, B or B.
Ability.
I'm thinking, well.
Long B.
Long B, thank you. Mobility and intergeneration, right? Because it's not only about your own life course. You have parents, and your parents had some experience, and that has an effect on your current life experience, and you will also have an effect on your children if you have children. Perfect. Inequality has to do with the opportunities, but also with what results you will have. Maybe two persons, we already know about these decades and decades of research, but two people can go into the same educational institution and have different outcomes. And the case is they more likely are not going to go to the same institutions. And the more unequal the country is, less probable is that this happens. Because that's perfect. We brought some socioeconomic status inequalities. Very good, yeah.
Maybe also like social norms, like how to behave in society, like you get taught how to live with other people.
Norms, perfect. What were you thinking when you think about norms?
I was, as a very simple example, I'm taught how to behave at school, how
Right.
to be respectful towards other people,
Right.
and yeah, very simple things. Also like outside of school, at home, my parents teaching me to like
Right,
keep my
right.
mouth closed and things.
So we have norms, we go back to the legal system, but not only, right? Sociologists, we are all about the norms. There are social norms, and they're not maybe explicit, but people expect that you behave some way or some other way, and this is going to have repercussions on education and on the labor market afterwards. Yes.
Maybe you can phrase it like cultural capital. So, for example, if your parents go with you to the museum, the theater, etc., and you have a different background, even if you enter the same school as your classmate.
Perfect. We bring different capitals into the discussion because most of the times we reduce it to socioeconomical. That explains a lot. But also there are mechanisms inside the socioeconomical, right? It's not because your house has money, you all of a sudden know things and you're a professional. That doesn't happen. So what are the mechanisms that go behind it? So which sociologist is behind this?
That's Bordeaux.
Perfect.
Bordeaux,
Yes, it's Bordeaux. We say Bourdieu very badly in all Latin America, but we know who we're talking about. So we have the economical capital, but he brings two other ones that are very important: the cultural and the social. And this is very important. All the theory of networking and subsystems. So if you know someone, your parents know someone, then that's how you get your first job. That changes your whole trajectory, right? And that has to do with your social capital. And if society is very close, so socioeconomical status don't interrelate in any way, then you are not going to have the same social capital as the higher class or the lower, different. So we have the cultural, that it's what do you do on your free time? You go and see music, and you have it's having the resources, but also what do you do with that money? Or what are your tastes? What is seen in your house when people put a show, or people read, don't read?
Would you count maybe gender differences to social, or is this social capital, or is it a separate point?
It's separate. It's separate. You know, sectorial studies, what they do is that they consider socioeconomical but also gender, and you can have double penalty if it's unequal to be high or low socioeconomical status and to be a man or a woman. If you are a female that you are in a poor household, then you would have double penalty, right? Gender. And this has to do with norms also. Why?
I would say you got raised differently if you're male or female.
Socialization is different, and what has to do with education?
Maybe when it comes to encouraging, we have like this gap in guidance subjects. So
Exactly.
More boys than girls.
Exactly.
It's definitely not because of the capacity of the brain or
Exactly.
the
Oh, very good. So professions are very gendered. Who decide to go in which field? And it has to do with norms. I mean, the discussion is huge, but I mean, it has to do with preferences that are socialized. So, but also with how difficult it is to go to this trajectory or to this one. With socioeconomical sector is the same, right? So if it's going to be much harder for you if you choose A or B, you're going to be more probably choosing B, right? And if all your socialization, first in the family and then in the education, points you to a specific trajectory, then it's more likely that you're going to go in that trajectory. But very good. Okay, so we have the educational system, right? We have inequality that goes before and after the educational system. We have the labor market and how this connects. When we think about how we connect education with labor market, what do you think? How it is connected? Like you go out, you finish education and then, yeah, you just knock on one door and start working, or how does it work? It's well linked, it's easy. What do you think? Yeah.
I'd say if you have a more complex education, you can have more specific and more hard to get positions, and so there are less other people asking for it, so you can have a higher chance of them getting that job.
Right.
Because if you have a simpler education, maybe more people can then apply to that same position and you have less of a chance of being taken.
Okay, so on one hand, we consider it a market because of that, because it's we have offer and we have demand, right? Depending on the point of view I mean, if you consider jobs, you have the offer of the firms. If you consider labor, you consider the people that finish education and go back. So you have offer and demand, but also economists and sociologists and people from other social science say it doesn't work exactly like a labor market, right? Like a market. But it's important to consider it. I mean, we have the main aspect of it, that it's people that are looking for jobs and people that are looking to hire people, right? Yes.
Maybe the effectiveness of labor is important.
What do you mean with effectiveness?
You have special requisites for a job, and with education you can do the job usually better.
Perfect. No,
And it's not only the muscle muscle work, it's the brain work.
No, of course, both. But also muscle work, you also have specific skills, right? And how the system connects with this other system, how it's linked, will explain a lot on how people transition to the labor market and how is the experience and how the trajectory is further along. We're going to discuss all that on the paper because the authors go deep in this aspect. I think it's very interesting. But the skills, so how the firmas know you have that skill?
Sometimes networking also plays a role.
Networking, social capital or networking, it's also called. 100%, especially in the private sector, but not only. 100%. What more?
Maybe also the outcome of your education, like how many years and what degree.
100%. So when we think the labor market it behaves as a market, the human capital theory explains a lot. I mean, it's very flooded, and we spend a lot of years trying to explain why it doesn't work exactly, but it works at some extent, right? Why it's better, why it's more desirable to have more or less years of education for the labor market.
I think it's diminishing.
Well,
So-
100%,
yes.
100%. But if
But
you think,
around-
who are the people that
Yes.
overall are making more money or are in more stable jobs, or it's going to be, on average, better for the people that are more educated, and that happens in every society. To what extent and how it changed through in history and through time, that's also important to discuss, of course. Yeah. Someone was going to say something. Okay, but we have, well, similar to cultural capital, but it has to do with the language you use or how do you present yourself, right? So socioeconomical status will have an effect on those things, and then the labor market will consider it as there's here saying signaling, for example, right? So if I see a CV and a curriculum, and I see some aspects, they will signal that this person is educated or comes from high socioeconomical sector. You know, this also works when you are going to the labor market. Yes.
If we connect labor market and mobility, so we see, we could talk about migration even in one country and how this changes the labor market, or a natural, like,
Resources, no.
No, Naturkatastrophen.
Natural
Catastrophes?
Yes, for example, and then
Yes,
changes.
yeah, and we put other complexity layers and complexity to the thing, but of course, this is happening on a territory that it has geographical characteristics, economic characteristics. Through history, this has developed, so it has specific economical production. Yes. With education also, if your territory has specific hazards, the educational system should prepare you also for that. So education is not only for the labor market, but it's socialization into the society you're going to live. You also brought the migration, and then we add another layer to the thing. But yes, if you migrate to a country and you enter to a labor market, your education, you received an education that was not part of this system. How does that get managed? The discussion is very important in these last decades because globalization and migration is going nothing but up. So how the system processes this, it's going to let people in and validate their credentials or not, and they are outside the system and all of that. Yes. And about the gender, we discussed norms. We already said that. So it can be legal aspects of this. I mean, women were not able to enter the labor market in every country at some point of the 20th century. In general, but then there are social norms. So how common is that women work or don't work in a specific labor market system, right?
Maybe one layer is missing. Is maybe the quality of education,
That's perfect.
the quality of teachers, and
that's perfect because at this point we are only talking until this about the vertical differences of education, right? You can have ground education, you can have low secondary, upper secondary or tertiary education. We are talking about the level, but there are horizontal differences that people talk. One is the quality. You can have the same degree, but it depends on where did you study it. And depends on the educational system if there's bigger or lower differences. For example, in Germany, there's no public-private division in secondary education. in the United States or in most of Latin American countries, you really need to consider if the person went to public or private school, right? So quality, yes, if there are differences in the territory, right? If the country it's more evenly distributed in terms of wealth or not, so it depends on same system, but depends where you are studying in the territory, the quality of your education. Yes. Yeah, very good point. We have other horizontal differences. The field of study. People talk about the field of study as a horizontal difference. So you have two professionals, but one is from social science and one is an engineer. It has differences, right? In wage, we know that. In wage, in how, in quality of work, in periods of joblessness. So we have same level of education, but we have horizontal differences, right? Yeah. And even there's a lot of studies about first generation engineers, for example. So you have the same level, the same field of study, but if you don't have the resources and you don't know, you can't ask your parents that maybe they are also engineers or not, if they can help you with that, or if they have a friend that can give you your first job. So there's a lot of differences in the labor trajectory for first generations than no. Yeah. What else are you thinking about? A very good quality, the level, the other aspects of horizontal inequalities that can be related to the territory, but also can be related to public or private institutions. What else? We're going to discuss it in the paper, but do you know what vocational education is? What is it?
It's an education that prepares you for a job, so like generally in Ausbildung, I guess.
Perfect, yes. So I hate the English term, it's very bad. In Spanish we say technical education, I think it's more on that side, but it's called vocational education, okay? And we're going to get into it, but it's this education that's more oriented to work than to an academic trajectory. And it's more or less present in all of the countries, and a lot of scientists want to study what's the effect on that. That's better for inequality or it's worse? What's the deal with vocational education, right? And it's better for the labor market or it's worse than having an academic degree. All these discussions that we're going to have. Okay, so finishing with the diagram that at this point it's a bit difficult to understand. Is there something in your mind that you have thought about or no?
I mean, this is probably going to be part of the presentation later, but I keep thinking about like the link is from the education to labor market and from the labor market to education.
Right.
It's so interesting how it's like, it's a very fine equilibrium, no? Like you have to have education that is ready for the market, and then the market also has to tell the education system what they need at the same time, more or less.
Right.
And then this changes so fast, no, with technology.
Exactly, and today it's changing faster, so there's also a crisis on how do we connect these two, because for example in Germany it's very well connected with the Ausbildung and the Ausbildung, it's okay, yes, and the firmas, but it doesn't allow change to go fast because it's very rigid, so it has its advantages and disadvantages, right? But yes, of course, it's a system, so how it communicates, it's important. Also, if you think education, it's a cause or it's an effect. You want to study it as what causes or as a product, and it depends on your research question. But it's very important to learn about both, right? So how a person gets to a specific educational level will have to do with the socioeconomical status, with the territory, with their gender, if they chose vocational education or not, but also it's an input for labor market education, right? So what's the effect of education on the job you on your first job, or on your first 5 jobs, or 10 years after you started working? What's the effect of education? Okay, so yeah, we have more questions than answers with this, but yeah, the thing about the life course is that it's to consider time, right? So it varies in time, and also it varies in time for the countries, and also there's time comparison in a country and between countries. We're going to discuss it more. Okay, let's use this word. It's thinking, like it's coming. Yeah. Good.
It's different
Ah, yes. All your hard work, babe. Sorry, but all in all, we can see, right? Okay, so we have this paper. Natalie sent it to you. Don't worry if you didn't read it, because the idea is to discuss all together a little bit, right? So this paper that was produced in the 2000s, so it has 26 years old, and it's considered today like a classic paper for vocational education. The authors are these 2 sociologists, very important, Josie Shabit and Walter Müller. They ask, they say vocational secondary education, where is diversion and where is safety net? And we're going to talk about it, but what do you think diversion means? It's not having fun. What do you think diversion is? Yes.
Only might mean the fact that they cut them out from the mainstream of education.
Exactly, goes in that direction, right? And what would be a safety net?
That it gives them like a minimum level of security in the
Exactly.
future of their market.
Exactly, so that's going to be the main question for these authors, right? Vocational education in the secondary level. It's a safety net or it's a diversion? And where do you think they are going to test it? What is going to be the outcome?
Maybe both.
No, yes, there's 2 hypotheses. We have these 2 hypotheses. They compete between each other. But I mean, where are they going to see if they are safety net or diversion?
I guess it's case specific, you know, depending on.
Yes, but in which variable of the individual they're going to see if this turned out safety net or turned out diversion?
From the age of the people.
I mean, all these are characteristics of the individuals, but I mean, we have the X is education, no? Vocational education or academic, and the Y?
And then maybe like either their employment or salary.
Labor market, perfect, exactly.
Income?
Yes, that could be. So we have different ways of operationalizing the labor market, but they want to see, once they are in the labor market, vocational education was a safety net or was diversion, right? And with whom are they going to be comparing?
The people that have higher education or also lower.
Exactly, so academic track, right? So people that maybe did only secondary education but academic, and people that did higher education, right? Okay, and they have, considering the theoretical framework, you can have 2 hypotheses. The human capital is going to say vocational education, safety net. So people are going to be better positioned in the labor market than people that didn't have the vocational education. The reproduction theory is going to say diversion, because who are the people that study vocational education in a system in general?
Sorry, what was the question?
Yes, who are the students that go for vocational education in general?
low income.
Exactly. So more students from low income choose vocational education in general. That's the tendency. So the reproduction theory is going to say, Achtung, you're letting these people from low socioeconomical background to choose a path that is going to reproduce the whole system. Because, yes, so that's the main discussion of vocational education, which I find exquisite, very interesting, right? And your colleague had a point there that it's, well, maybe both things happen. We need to consider when it's vocational education a safety net and when it's more of a reproduction, more of a diversion for these lower socioeconomical students, right? Okay, and they add another thing. What I like about this paper, and that's why I bring it to you, I mean, the models are very simple. It was 26 years ago, so data was still very, they probably used these huge computers and put one, had to process it overnight, so it was not very modern and technological, but what I think that it's very good, it's they really thought about the theoretical aspect and the question. And today we have all this data and we do a lot of data-driven things, you know, I do it too, I get this data and I start doing models without thinking a lot about the question, and that can be a big problem. There's some books that are very interesting. One is Bullshit, it's called Bullshit, that it's now kind of a bestseller, these US-American authors, but it's like, if you do data-driven analysis, you can be very wrong in a lot of ways. So we need to think about your research question. You need to have a research question. This is really hard. I mean, we struggle with this on the PhD. You struggle with this every time you sit down and work on a paper. Research question, the first thing. And then the theoretical framework, because there's people before you that try to respond that and use different theoretical framework and mechanisms. And this is an example. So the research question, it's clear, right? It's vocational education, good for labor market outcome or not? What do we think? Well, from the human capital perspective, safety net, because if you have two young people that go to the labor market and one has a skill certificate, well, maybe I just will hire that one because it has more. So human capital is saying this kid has more to offer in the labor market, specific skills, and they're going to get hired. But the reproduction theory is saying your system had the chance for these people to go to an academic track, and you encourage them or give them this possibility to deviate from the more prestigious or more better position, right? And then they also have this that it's very important, and that's why I wanted to talk about the paper with you. It's that they really think about the country comparison. Because we sometimes do whatever with the country comparison, right? Like I have this question, and yes, I'm going to see it here in Germany and in France. I don't know, I have the data. And the important thing is you need to ask yourself, why are you studying this context? They're not the names. You should forget about what you know about Germany, what you know about Uruguay, about Chile, and try to explain with the variables that are important, what about this context? What is about this country that is so interesting? And what this country comparison is going to add? What is the value of comparing these countries, right? It was very interesting for me to work about Chile and Uruguay in a group that only works with European countries, because they don't know anything about Chile and Uruguay. So I really had to make the effort. There's no common ground here. I need to describe everything, and we should do that for every research, right? It's not Germany. What are you talking about Germany? It's that has a strong vocational education, that firmas are very linked to the educational process. It's very industrialized country, so you need to explain me what about these countries, what's the interesting thing, right? And the authors say about the connection between education and labor market, there are two types of countries. You can think of a typology. One is the qualification spaces, the occupational labor market. Germany, it's in there. That it's the countries are education and labor market are very well linked, and it's thought out what education connects to what specific labor outcome position, right? And then you have organizational spaces or internal labor market that are, for example, the example generally is USA, or sometimes it's United Kingdom or France, but they are more mixed. But more on that side, that is, education is more general, so people receive their credential, but you really don't exactly know where you're going to work in. So the transition is more loose, right? There's more possibilities where you start on your first job. Then you're going to grow and you're going to, the system is going to get to know you and your worth, but it's internal, so they don't know beforehand. That's, you're okay with this explanation, or I lost you? Tell me, we're okay? So in which system do you think transition goes smoother?
In the first one?
In the first one, exactly, because it's occupational, right? So you know you finish your education as a technician, and there's a specific place on the industry that is for you, and the system trusts that credential. You show this credential, you're hired, right? I'm simplifying a lot, but so the transition is smoother, it's quicker. Yes.
The question is, how do you define smoother? It could also be very bureaucratic and could also block and need too much time. And
Yes.
if you are more an entrepreneur and you have all the ideas, then I think probably organization spaces
That's
are...
a very good counter explanation. That's very good. But I mean, generally it's operationalized as how many months it takes you to get your first job, for example. And in general, in these countries, it's faster than in these countries, that it takes a while. The other thing is how well matched is. Like you studied a specific role as a technical in some aspect, and your first job has to do with that or not. So the matching, that's another thing that can be studied. A third thing, the wages. And if you start in a general job, probably you are gaining less money than someone than a job that requires some skills, right? So in that sense, this typology says it takes longer for this, but it's less trap also. You can move more. So it has advantages and disadvantages, right? But it has to do with how the country organized and how education and labor market connects, and of course all the laws and norms, right? But, yeah. So the country comparison, that's what I told you. This I can't say his name, sorry, but him and Toyne, they're from 1970. They have this handbook. I also recommend it. They're more from political science, but they make a deep dive on what is to compare. What are you comparing? Why you compare countries? You compare countries that are alike or different, and in which way are they different, right? Okay. And they say replace the names of the country with the names of the variables. I mean, not to make a list, but to say what is this case? It's linked. It's this. It's more occupational labor market, or it's more internal labor market. You know, what are you saying about these countries? Okay, and then the dimensions. We talk about what the labor market outcomes. No, sorry. This is the dimensions for the institutional context. So if it's the secondary education, it's stratified, if it has occupational specificity. That's what I told you about how sorry. In this system, you have occupational specificity. You have 18 years old, but you finish with a specific group of skills that allow you to go to this job or this job or this job. And in this case, it's more general. And the main example for this typology is USA, that you can finish higher education with not a specific profile. You can choose.
Like general studies degree. Yeah.
Exactly. So you finish higher education, but still you don't have a specific occupational degree, right? Okay, so you have the dimensions. They operationalize also education because you need to compare. They compare 11 countries. So how do you compare the education? We have come a long way also for this, right? With classification, we have ISCO, we have CASMIN. I don't know if you have used the PISA assessment data, or if you plan to, but it's incredible that you can compare more than, I don't know how many countries at this point, but 80 countries. But for that, you need to standardize a little bit. So you have the levels, and also if it's vocational or if it's academical. And then we have the countries. You just need to know that Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, they are on the group of the occupational labor market, right? So the linked labor market. You have United States alone in one group where it's very lax, so there's no standardization, there's no specific link, you know. So, and in these two extremes, you have the other countries varying a little bit. And then they want to test their labor market outcomes, how, as we said. So they do a model of employed and unemployed. I think it's 2 years after the degree or something like that. Skilled worker or unskilled worker, so they see if the job occupation is skilled or not. And the occupational prestige, that is also another scale, right? And I don't know if we're a bit rounding up, right? No, we're okay. Okay. So what we have is they do some models, right? First, they do the effect of being in an academic or in a vocational trajectory, that effect on being unemployed or employed. Then they do it skilled or unskilled. This is log because it's logistical models. And then the prestige, that it's linear, so they just do a linear model. And they have the countries, and then they do some correlations about the type of the typology they did, right? And yeah, I'm not going to bore you with this, but we have some of the conclusions they have, right? That it's vocational, as you said, both things happen, right? So vocational education on the labor market outcomes is a safety net for being employed. So it lowers your chances of being unemployed. So it's easier overall in the 11 countries you have more probability of being employed if you did a vocational education than if you didn't, right? Parenthesis, we also have the problem of to what are you comparing the education? And what do I mean with this? To what do you compare vocational education?
So earlier we said like the academics,
right?
But you can also compare it within the group, maybe.
Okay. But within the group, what would that be?
Like if that's maybe more into detail. Like if we talk about now employment and unemployment, what is leading you to this outcome? So within the vocation group, but maybe it's
No, but very, very good, because you can, the results can be driven by other stuff, right? Because this main problem of studying vocational education 26 years ago, if they are not controlling selection into the groups, for example, right? So they are not seeing who are the ones that are studying vocational education, and then who are the ones that get hired or not. Today we are far more advanced on controlling by personality traits, or controlling by, you know, they do control by gender, because it's very clear that entering labor market is very different from women and men. So in general, scholars separated women and men in the labor market and studied them separately. But also there are other variables that we need to control that have to do with these groups, and could be making spurious relations between them, you know? I mean, I'm going to exaggerate, but maybe all the more driven people are the ones that do vocational education, so then you see, no, vocational education, they do great, but that's, misleading, because there are variables they are not controlling.
Maybe the comparison could be, yes, to university or academic careers, but it could also be without vocational education, as a leaving school and looking for jobs.
Perfect. So in general, of course, doing just general education, so only primary education, compulsory, or doing something else, it's better to do something else. So this group, we're going to leave it behind, right? But the question is, you should be comparing vocational education to the ones that did only secondary education but academic, or you should be comparing them to the ones that with higher education. Because higher education, clearly, because of the vertical division we already saw, it's going to be better for entering the labor market. So it depends. That's a discussion I have a lot for Uruguay and Chile, because of course it's a diversion if you think these people could be studying higher education, but what if they are not studying higher education? It's better for them to have a specific skill, right? So that discussion is very cool. Yeah.
So I'm a bit confused how you would define higher education. So, because for me, academics, so what we do, study, and then
That's higher.
PhD, for me it's higher education.
No, tertiary education and higher education, they're saying as synonyms, and it's after secondary education. So after high school, after all what comes, bachelor and beyond. Bachelor and beyond. Yes. Yes, we get a bit very in our tiny group, but there's a lot of people that don't do higher education. I mean, it's still today explains stuff and makes a difference. Yes, especially depending on the country, right?
Excuse me.
Yes.
I just wonder with these OLM systems, with these occupational labor market systems, how often they occur. If they only occur in high-income countries, and not even in all high-income countries. So we're only looking at very specific countries and leaving the rest of the other countries out.
That's a beautiful question. And also, it's part of the discussion. I mean, in my dissertation, bringing Chile and Uruguay to broaden up this discussion. For example, what happens with all the global south? For example, what's the organization systems there? We don't know. These are typologies also, right? There are also these. I also work with these authors, Tiprit, Elbers, that 5 years ago they said these typologies are great to think about the problems, but they are also very constrained, right? Because you think inside the country there's no variation, and there's a lot of variation. These typologies have the illusion to make everything very compact and right. So even in these countries, the typology is not perfect, and it's a typology, but it's important what these authors do, and what you should do when you have a research question is say, okay, I have this theory that some other people have developed, and I'm going to operationalize it like this. I'm going to say, I'm going to see how occupational specificity, how is the occupational specificity in these countries, and they put 0, 1, and 2. It's very simple how they did it, right? They could, today you would do a cluster analysis, something, typology, you know, there's more data power today to do this stuff, but the question is very important. So you want to know, regarding these categories, how you group the countries, and if that explains or not your research question, because in this research question we don't have the countries, right? It's what's the vocational education effect on the labor market. But what they are saying is the institutional context is important. So this specific relation will change if you are in a context where there's more linkage between education and labor market, or if there's less linkage, right? If the education is standardized or it's less standardized, if it's stratified or not, because that too, if in the United States there's this discussion about the credentials losing their value, right? But it's also that it's not that standardized. I mean, if you get your bachelor degree, you are not saying much. It's not that standardized as in here you get your bachelor degree. But the horizontal differences there are important. Where did you get your degree, or in what field, or you know? So, in which context you are discussing this relationship, it's important. That's the third hypothesis of them. It's going to be different if you see this in an OLM context or an internal labor market context. Okay?
And also more broadly, like, why is vocational education a topic anyway in the terms of development? Also, like, a lot of countries are looking up to like, for example, Germany, especially in Latin America. We had this session, I think it was in the education seminar, not here, but a lot of countries were trying to copy this system, because first thing, what you have in Latin America, I think we had it in one class, had a lot of ninis, no? So young people that are not in education, not in the labor market. So this was kind of like a solution for this. Okay, what do you do with all of these non-educated and let's say idle people? Of course, for many reasons, it's not that they want to be like that, but for the socioeconomic reasons. And this was like maybe a main solution for this. But then, okay, maybe not, because then if it's reproducing, then it's just letting these people be in the same socioeconomic problem that they had before. And then what we talked about, the counterfactual in the beginning. I mean, the better question is, what would have happened if you didn't have any vocational education? Is it better at least to have them some employment, even if it's low skill employment? Or do you really want to have everybody like pursuing an academic degree so that they get, so it's, this is the relevance, I think, of what I think in my mind.
No, exactly, and that's why it's so discussed, and also that's why we don't really know. We need to study what's happening with vocational education in other countries that are not these 11, or only Europe or United States, that it's what's generally discussed. Yes, perfect. Yeah, that's a main discussion in the Prince in Uruguay. When vocational education went further along, there were a lot of people that said, no, we need the same opportunities for all, which in absolute terms I totally agree. But if you see socioeconomical level in Uruguay, that has, it's well-developed country in the region, so it goes well in other socioeconomical aspects. But in education, only 1 in 10 students of low socioeconomical quintile and high school. Only 1 in 10. That's very low. So if you are saying that the academic track is allowing everyone to go to higher education, that's a lie, you know. So you need to discuss between not having education at all, or only primary education, or having vocational education, what would be better? That too. Also in rich countries, I mean, in Germany the proportion of higher educated is lower than in the United States. This means it's worse or not? Are these people having a good labor market trajectory? Because Germany has this system where the officios, I don't know how to say, the technical work, it's very well valued, and also wages are good, and so the inequality gap is not that high. So in that case, it's a trap, but it's a trap. So all these discussions, right? No. Okay, I was in the, okay, in here. But yes, 100%. These are only typologies, and they were developed only about the global north, and specifically about Europe and United States. But they allow us to think about the relationship between education and labor market. How do they connect? This operationalization, you can do it in every country and see this one. How is the occupational specificity? How is the stratification of secondary education? Where are the linkages? Where is the qualification of space, right? For example, these countries, because all are industrialized, they don't consider anything regarding the labor market specificity, right? And we should add that if we want to see the global south, because, for example, you see Chile. Chile has more higher education shares than Europe average, but has a very big first sector economy. So you are having all these kids educated, but then you don't have any job placement for them, right? So everything needs to be considered. And in this case, I think these authors don't consider what happens with if it's industrialized country or not, because they are similar. So adding other countries would bring this heterogeneity. Yeah. Okay, but let's go back to the conclusions. So vocational education in the labor market outcomes. Safety nets. Well, they see in the models that the probability of being employed is higher if you are in vocational, if you have vocational education. So yes, safety net. You have more chances to be employed than not to be employed in most of the countries. But what they see, it's not any vocational education has this effect, and this is very interesting. One big difference between vocational education, and that it's very studied in the world, is if it's school-based or firm-based. Here in Germany, students go to the firms, to the factories, to the work, and they do the work there. But in most of Latin American countries, I think Costa Rica is the exception, it's school-based. So you are learning in school things about the labor market. It's connected or not. Are the firms aware and working on the curriculum with the schools or not? What they see is in the countries where the link is strong, so it's firma-based and firmas and education work together, then this is stronger, right? If not, having vocational education doesn't mean you have these specific skills, and also the firmas don't, in signaling theory, right? They don't see it as valuable as with the others. And the other thing is that this is more common, therefore, in occupational labor markets, right? Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland. Yes. The second thing is when vocational education it's a deviation, they also found empirical empirical proof, thank you, empirical proof about vocational education being a deviation, being part of the reproduction of inequalities. And they saw it especially in the prestige, right? And specifically if the system is highly stratified. And the very interesting thing about this paper, it also was in the countries where vocational education is a safety net. So it's also, it also generates very different tracks and very stratified tracks, right? Also these countries, it's not one thing or the other. In these countries, both effects appear. So vocational education is a safety net for being employed and for being in more qualified employment, but it has less prestige. The probability of ending up in less prestige jobs, it's also higher because the system is more closed, right? So that was their third discussion. And that's why the paper, if you see, it says where. So vocational education, where is safety net and where is diversion. And it happens that it's the two sides of a same coin, it's what they say. So in countries where vocational education is strong, it's generally very stratified, the tracks are very separated, and so it secures you job, but also it's going to diverge you from being the more prestige jobs. That's their yeah.
Have they divided this by, or like any other paper, by maybe like the organization of the country before, for example, like if it had a socialist past?
Well, there are some papers that every paper that considers school to work transition in this aspect of considering the institutional aspects as well as the individual aspects build on this paper. So that's why I'm saying it's a classical paper at this point, right? And there are some authors that consider the ex-Soviet countries as a very interesting laboratory example of what happens when you change the system, and it's interesting because there are differences in the country. There's one paper about Hungary that's very interesting, and what they see, they have both school-based and firma-based vocational education, and they see huge difference in that sense.
We'll ask you about
Yes, and also I think that for the Latin American countries, it's a good laboratory also in the sense that most of them bring the French tradition of education, so academic education is the main track. But in the last 50 years, all of them have made an effort of having more vocational education. So what's happening? It is reducing inequality, not what happened to the individuals that go in these trajectories. Yeah.
Yes, it was a bit on this point, and also on the text. They had mentioned in the text in the start how they took France as an example because of the baccalaureate and the different kind of baccalaureate you had. It's been 26 years. It's changed a lot. How much do you? How long does it take, you think, to change profoundly how these vocational education schools affect? Because you said 50 years now. This is 25 years. Did it change a lot since then? Like, how is it today on the data that we already have on those countries? Like,
that's very interesting, and also it's what we were talking about, having life course, so seeing people in time, but also countries in time. This paper I told you, I also will send it to Natalie and she can send you. These authors studied, well, at this point it's more 8 years ago, but studied USA, Germany and France, and they say we keep repeating this is what happens with these countries, but let's take a look. And what they say is France has increased the vocational education, and vocational education works very linked to the labor market. The thing is, because it's so less share of vocational education than Germany, we consider them very different. And these offers bring to the table the importance of seeing the composition as well as the linkage, you know? So maybe you have a very good linkage in the vocational education, but your vocational education is low. So we need to consider, or maybe maybe engineers in Latin American countries are very well linked, but less people are studying engineering. So it's different, the composition of the people you have in the careers. It's different to what's the linkage specifically, right? But yeah, good point. And they make this exact point. France today, the vocational education, it's much higher than it was when in 2000, and it works. It's linked. That's what we are saying. Yes. But about that, I think economists study more than we do, like how the institutional life or development through the years. I don't know. What people is saying is that change is happening faster than before, like the cycle. And so I don't know. I need to see. And with globalization, right? We have universities of other countries being part of specific countries. You know, you have U.S. Universities starting to be in Asian countries, for example, and
recently they opened a Berkeley University in the other Venezuela as well.
Exactly. So it's changing. The landscape of education, higher education in the world is changing rapidly. So I don't know. But it's interesting to see. It would be important to compare 2 time points and see how it has changed in different countries. Yes.
I have a question here. Do you know this like qualification systems? Like I read about it, I think 1 year ago, and I know that in a lot of Latin American countries they have been working on it specifically to make the job descriptions like very specific, so that then the system can use this both the labor market and the education to know, okay, this person came with code, I don't know, like.
Yeah, but that's standardizing.
Standardizing the occupations, the skills. How is it in the countries that you study, like Chile and Uruguay?
The thing is, in Chile and Uruguay, there's a very good thing about vocational education, that it's you can still do higher education with vocational education. So it's not closed. Exactly. So it's not a trap in that sense, and that's very different than what happens here in Germany, that you should go again in the system, do a couple of more years. I mean, it's getting easier, but it's hard to change tracks. In Latin American countries, in the last decades, they have made the same level. So if you finish secondary education, vocational or academic, you can go to higher education. Does it happen if you see it in the real life? Not that much. So clearly there are norms, there are constrictions, but legally it's possible. So that I would say it's a highlight. And the negative thing is it's not only that it's school-based, it's very separated from the labor market world. So labor market don't see this vocational education as good. So it's not prestigious. I mean, it might be changing, but it goes behind the changes in the labor market. So the connection is not very good. No, that I would say. But people are finishing more these degrees, at least in Uruguay, than the academic ones. For achieving the titles is working. Okay, and I have the abstract, but I think after what we discussed, if you read it, it's going to be very clear. I recommend you to read it to see the clarity of they start with the composition of what's the discussion, and they're very clear with what's the research question, what are they doing, and the results. And you need to start learning to write these abstracts because it's a very important aspect of.
If you get in academia.
Well,
If
yes,
not, then-
yes, of course. But if you get into projects and yes,
For any grants.
social projects, economical projects, that also. Yeah, that's all on my end. But if you have any, this is the DevelopmentE. I encourage you to go also. The lectures are open, and if you want to go.
Very nicely.
Yes.
I took a tour and it's nice.
Yes, and check out for the student assistant jobs. They're also good.
Yes.
So
If
you,
there's any questions.
DevelopmentE, that it's
Wissenschaftszentrum.
Wissenschaftscentrum Berlin, yeah.
But you said you also connected to the FU, so
Yes, my PhD, I'm doing it in the FU.
also here the LIE, or is it
No, no.
labor market?
The thing is, my supervisor works in the DevelopmentE, so I'm always there in
Okay.
this skill formation and labor market unit.
So it's more connected to dancer, Natalia, dancer, or it?
I mean,
Yeah, but her professor is there in. But your second supervisor is.
no, my supervisor is Heike Solda, that is, she's from FU, but she's headed, establishing this institute.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, luckily I have been doing some connections with Natalie because Latin American context, that's not.
No, I was talking about Natalia Dancer. She's labor market professor here at
Right.
FU,
Yeah, but maybe she
maybe-
will have been
Yeah,
your
yes,
supervisor.
okay.
I don't know.
Sorry.
It happens sometimes that you have like, because these are institutes, but
Right.
they are not.
Universities,
So
so I need to be enrolled in a university.
Mhm.
And it's the FU because Heike is a professor here, but I can't rarely, yeah.
I have you chosen Uruguay and Chile. Is this your background from Chile? Or?
I'm from Uruguay,
Yeah.
yes, and I busted. But also, I thought they were, yeah, thank you for asking. I thought there were very good two cases to add to the discussion because in the region, they are both high-income countries. The informality is on the lowest share in the region. Well, Uruguay has this problem of culminating education, but otherwise, socioeconomically, they show a lot of good indicators that would make the comparison easier in that sense. But on the other hand, informality is low, but it's on the 25%, so that's very different from Europe, so I want to see how that works. About caregiving and the caregiving system is very different, so female participation in the labor market is lower, so I want to see that also. The NEET population is higher than for the European countries. So I thought it got closer to these countries in other aspects and made the comparison a bit easier. Then you will have more rurality, more inequality, more poverty, but I wanted to see what happens with these
How
two.
it fits.
Yes, how it works in these two countries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question regarding what you said. So, Miguel, so in this country, Latin America, you have more people getting into this vocation now,
Yes, I mean,
but then also they are less prestigious. So how come they choose this if they know like
well,
the market doesn't really want them?
I mean, it's less prestigious, but it's better to finish high school education than not to finish it. So in that sense,
So it's like at least I have something.
at least I have that.
Okay.
And also, I would say that. So it's a good way of finishing your secondary study.
Okay, so
And
it's the safety net pretty much.
Exactly, it would be more of a safety net, and the prestige, it has changed. So if you see more middle class students are choosing them, so it's getting a way of being the second chance for the lower socioeconomic sector. It's changing. And also in Chile, especially, it's growing more the tertiary education. That should be very interesting to analyze also. And it's new because it came up with the higher education expansion, you know, like higher education expanded a lot in the world in the last years, but it diversified more. So you have all these tertiary, not professional
schools with this technical knowledge.
Exactly, but it's tertiary education, but still it's not professional. So that discussion is also interesting to see.
I also wonder if the access to higher education in Latin American countries such as Chile and Uruguay is high compared to, just as high as in Germany. Is there a lot of public, are there a lot of public universities or not private universities? This question.
Well, it's very interesting because in Chile it's higher than in Germany, the access, but then you should consider the horizontal differences. So less people are studying engineering, more people are studying social science, so you have differences that would explain why it's less translated into more GDP, for example. And Chile, it's a very private system. So labor market, it's very on the labor, it's very on in the state market continuum. It's very on the market side of things. It had this very huge social mobilization in I think 2014 or
There was
no more.
like a movie, I think.
Well, but it was huge and it was driven by the students to lower the cost of university. So it's a very unequal country and very private education, but still mobility is high. So it's a study case. And it has a higher education share. Uruguay, it's very I mean, you can access to education until higher education for free. It's public, but people don't. We have a very important problem of people ending secondary education. So even if it's free, people are not receiving it because they can't. They don't finish high school. And that's the big paradox of Uruguay. It's very equal country. It's one of the rich countries in the region, but we need to fix that education aspect.
I have one question. In Germany, we have like this public sector and this public education and incentives like BAföG, so it's more easy for poorer background or more poor background to study. But even if we look at the factors of achieving higher education, and we see, okay, it's very important that your parents also got like Abitur and university degree. How is it in Latin America? Is there similarities? Because you mentioned it's more private sector, but